it's a system, it's a way of marching, it's a way of teaching, both playing and marching, that they've implemented, obviously, over time. Actually, I know for a fact the resources down there are pretty solid as far as financial, as far as staff members for some of these bands. So, like I said, some things you can't control. Each district, especially in Ohio, it seems like is a little bit different as far as what they have and what they don't have. But as far as you being, sound in your philosophy and sound and consistent as far as implementing it, good things can happen. I love that last shot. That baritone player with the glasses was like 12. And he just performed that show. That just goes to show that, as long as you are teaching them properly, kids are very, very capable of great things. This next example is totally different. We're going to watch a clip of the Ohio University Marching 110 play, what's the name of the tune, Braden?
Party Rock Anthem.
Yes, Party Rock Anthem. Okay, now, I'm not playing these back to back as a joke or to make fun of anyone or anything. It's just an example of how different marching band styles can be, and that's one of the focuses, one of the purposes, I guess, or the purpose behind me being here, is to explain that there isn't just one way, there isn't just one style. There are lots of different things you can do as long as you're, again, consistent and you have a high standard of performance level. So let's have a look at the OU marching band. With sound.
So get up, get down, put your hands up to the sound of LMFAO, the Party Rock Anthem.
Was there energy behind their performance? They played loud. There wasn't a whole lot of dynamic contrast, but I didn't hear any crazy, uncharacteristic sounds coming from an individual or a couple people going nuts. So again, there's nothing wrong with doing things like that. It's just a different way. And that was one of my main points this morning, is that it's okay to do something other than a competitive thing when you're outside. Yeah. So, before I start talking nonstop for 2 hours, I want you to think of one thing maybe you want to know, or one thing you don't know that you hope to learn in the next couple hours. And write it down or type it. I just want to make some points, I guess, a little bit more clear. When we're talking about student leadership, make sure that you have a defined process to select your drum major, field conductor, section leaders, however you want to describe your student leadership. All right. I know of a couple of directors that pretty much just approach a very strong musician and say, how would you feel about being drum major? I really don't like that approach, okay? Because there's just no accountability, I guess, or maybe that isn't the right word, but there has to be a process, and I feel like you have to open it up. You can have guidelines. You can say it's only upperclassmen, only sophomores and older. You can have an interview. I know some people that make their candidates conduct, write papers, fill out an application, whatever you need to do, but make sure that it's a process and a defined process. And if you want to safeguard even a little bit more from ridicule, have some colleagues of yours from maybe neighboring school districts or some teachers that you're friends with from neighboring school districts, music teachers, come in and be judges for these auditions, okay? Because that way, if so-and-so that really wanted it doesn't get it, and it was kind of obvious, but they just don't understand, you can say, look, not only did I not pick it, but we have these score sheets that completely validate you being, not as strong as the next candidate. So just make sure that there is a process. That's really important. That can cause some friction if you just kind of arbitrarily select, okay, I'm going to pick the best trumpet player as my trumpet section leader. Well, if they're irresponsible and kind of a jerk, that's being a little harsh, but then you probably don't want them as your section leader. So, and who knows if that person would want it. So just make sure that there's a process, and you explain it, and you advertise it for your students' leadership. Okay. Also, we talked a lot about band parents, and I mentioned the budget a little bit, but be aware of what that budget is, and realize that if you become not friends, but if you have a good relationship with your band parents, you can make up for a lot of district shortfalls through the band parents and their fundraising ability. Don't be afraid to give them ideas when it comes to fundraising. I know at Willoughby South we used to do a bowl-a-thon every year to raise money. I brought that to my first teaching job, and they thought that was the bee's knees. I mean, they were just like, a bowl-a-thon? That's great! How fun! And it raises money. It was like I was, inventing something that was really, really, really amazing when I wasn't. It was just a bowl-a-thon. So share ideas. Be aware that the budget, you have some input to the budget, and it can definitely be your friend. I know we talked about that already, but I wanted to make that clear. There are some handouts that hopefully are available electronically, Brandon, right? One of them is a calendar, and your calendar can look like anything you want it to look like. What I did was I just printed off, I think off of Word or iCal. I would print off a blank calendar and I would fill it in by hand, just because I liked doing it that way. You can be official and punch it in the computer. If your band has a website or a Facebook page, you can post it anywhere you need to. But make sure that you have a calendar. Make sure that there are hard copies as well as electronic copies. Make sure that your administration, athletic department has a copy. Make sure that all of your students and all of your parents have a copy. I was a little bit redundant. I think I would pass out calendars in the spring. I would mail home calendars. The same calendars. I wanted nobody to use I didn't know that we had this rehearsal as an excuse. Okay? I was really, really, really hardcore about that. Okay, so make sure you create your schedule well in advance and you have that document. Another huge one is your marching band handbook. Okay, And we didn't have one of those until I want to say my third or fourth year. It just didn't exist. And finally it was like, okay, I'm going to put down on paper basically the procedures and rules and regulations for everything I do. And front to back, it was like 9 or 10 pages. So maybe, I think we're talking 20 pages if it's just front-sided. And it gave the procedure for rehearsal, for performances, what to do on a football game, how we fundraise, the uniform requirements, and I mean anything you could really have a question about is answered in this handbook, and I think that's available to you guys. So use it as a point of reference if you wish. You guys probably come from programs that have maybe even bigger handbooks than that, but just be detailed. That was and has been one of my best tools, because if there was a student that decided to not do what I wanted them to do, I had what the right thing to do was documented, and I always had the parents and students sign off on it every year. The last page was always student and parent signature, and it had to be returned with their medical form. Because if a student, again, broke a rule, or I had an issue with the parent or a student, and then the parent called and said, I can't believe this, I could say, well, I get much nicer than this, but you signed the handbook document, it's there, I trust that you as mom or dad or grandma read it, that's what it is. And unfortunately, it wasn't always that cut and dry, but that is your first kind of line of defense. This is what I want to do, this is how we do it, you signed up on it, so let's go. And it really helped. It was a way of backing myself up before I had to get anyone else involved. Some other documents I handed out. Band parent budget. We already talked about that. Yeah. I think that's it as far as the documents. But please do read through that. Skim it. Don't do anything with it. And when you get your first gig, then maybe pull it out and check it out, because I think there's a lot of relevant information out there, regardless of what style you want to do. And that's kind of one of the underlying themes. You can do any style, have any kind of band you want, as long as there is structure. Very important. Okay. One of the last things that we really haven't gotten into is how to design a show. And you could do an 8-hour clinic and then some on that, but it's all a matter of deciding what style or what kind of band you want to be. What goes into designing a halftime show? You tell me. Other than I know I just said what style, but what else? Eyewear. Okay, that is a software program used to design drill. So if you have access to that, or who is going to write your drill? I know this is a little redundant, but I just want to go over it. What else goes into designing a show?
How much time you have to learn your show, how difficult it is?
Absolutely. How much time you have to learn your show? What, is band camp 2 weeks? Is it 1 week? Do you rehearse every day starting July 15th until August 30th? I mean, who knows what the schedule is? And luckily, as director, you have control over that. Yes, John?
A theme or a concept?
A theme or a concept, absolutely. What's the idea of your show going to be? And it can be as simple as, I want to do 80s rock tunes. It can be as simple as the music of Britney Spears. It can be the Kiski area band this year that I'm working with. The name of their show is Prima Donna, and it's about developing this prima donna character through the music that we're playing. So it's a little cerebral, but actually if you were to see the show, it's not, but it kind of sounds it. Go ahead.
Instrumentation.
Instrumentation, okay? That goes hand in hand with it, okay? That's not to say you can't play swing without any brass instruments, or if you only have 2 brass players, but it makes it a little more difficult, the gist of it, okay, the arrangements, okay? You want to set your kids up for success, so you want to make smart choices, and instrumentation is definitely something that you want to take into account. Yes?
How long the show you're allowed to put on?
That's a really, really good point. How long of the show, how much time you have to perform a given show, and if you have, let's say, 10 minutes at a festival, but at home football games, because of the other band, you only have 4 minutes, is the show constructed in a way where you can leave off one of the tunes or two of the tunes are part of your show, and it still will make sense, it will still be entertaining, the kids will still have a positive performance. Okay, so definitely time is something that gets overlooked. And my first year, again, definitely didn't always take that into account, as at some home games we're finishing up our show and the football team is running through us, okay? And that was partially, the coach not being understanding of our performance, but I mean, it was also my fault because we should have ended earlier. Yes?
When you're talking about leaving out tunes, if you're in a competition style band and you are rehearsing that one competition show, and I don't know how to ask what I'm asking. Are you talking about like in a show style band, you like have like a set number of songs that you have drill separately done for that way, or like if you're leaving out tunes, how do you have to then rewrite drill if you only have one? You know what I mean? If you want to leave out like the ballad and you wanted to do beginning and end.
That's a really good point. And if you didn't hear or kind of get the question, it's in a show style band or in bands that kind of do like one tune, next song, and they're all kind of separate entities. It's pretty easy to just say, okay, we're not going to do the closer, or we're just going to do the opener, and it makes sense both from a drill perspective and musically. But some of these competitive shows, even the one we watched, Kennesaw Mountain today, how would you trim off some of that show, or where would you stop where it makes the most sense? And I guess the way to answer that question is you would pick a spot at Cadence Point maybe, or at the end of a segment of the show, and if you need to alter that last chord or something to make it more final sounding, or if you want to make it more obvious that that's where you're stopping that part of the show, then go ahead and make little adjustments. Or, for example, I know at Kiski this year, we did not know the end of our drill for our competitive show. So we simply played and marched as much as we knew, and then we created a last fake set where everyone just kind of marched forward to the front sideline and then played the rest of the show standing still. So you have those creative liberties to make little adjustments to make it make sense. Or even in some highbrow, cerebral, competitive shows, the opener, or even the ballad or the closer, or the middle song or the closer, there are pretty clear points where they end. So you could play your opener, and then a lot of times we would play at Beaver, we'd play our parade song that we did for summer parade standing still for the football crowd, because at football games I was concerned with obviously performance level, but not taking up too much time and appealing to the crowd as much as I could. Okay, my background is competitive, but we still played at every football game on every Friday or sometimes Saturday nights or afternoons. So although I considered that a little bit when it came to planning my competitive show, when it came time for football games, I always made sure we played a little bit of our competitive show, but we also did We're an American Band, because that's what we did for a parade, or White Rabbit, or one of those, Tom Wallace, who is a ranger for Rangers Publishing, one of those rock tunes that we would do for parades, or our school's fight song in addition to that. I try to, what I used to say, throw the crowd a bone as much as possible, because although I had a very good relationship with my community, I knew that if we had performed our entire competitive show, there would have been at least a couple of moments of maybe head scratching, or because that's just, on a Friday night, that's just a different crowd. Okay, there are going to be people there that appreciate what you do and respect what you do, but a lot of people are there to watch football because it's a football game, and that's okay. That's why you have to take some artistic liberties and adjust your show and play a lot in the stands and have your drum line play a lot, and it's okay. It's okay to get into a football game. You have to sell that part of marching band to your kids, because you do that more than festivals or competitions or parades. So it's really, really important. And we haven't even really touched on that when talking about styles of bands, but that's really important, okay? You are there on Friday night, whether you are excited about it or not, especially if it's rainy and cold and whatnot. You're there to support the team, support your school, support your community, and it's up to you to do it to the best of your ability. And I was really really passionate about explaining that to my students because, you know, that's our job. And when it comes to things like playing the alma mater for pregame and Star Spangled Banner, okay, no one in the crowd might know what you're playing for halftime, but they know the Star Spangled Banner, and they know the alma mater, and I was going to make sure we sounded really, really good on those tunes, because those might be the only two pieces they know, but we're going to make sure that we sound great. So it's all a matter of, you know, philosophy and perspective, really, yes.
Really quick to go with that, just as like a side note for your FYI, I don't know how it is in like other areas, but our area just started being really nitpicky with the reffing. So playing like stance twos and stuff like that, it had to be when the football team was down the other end, or else they started deducting points for the home team, and that's a good way to get the community to not like the Cougars.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, yes. If you do anything that negatively impacts the football team, the pride of whatever high school, it isn't good. Okay, so definitely that's something to consider, and it's pretty common sense. If the game is going on and they're like right in front of where the band is sitting, it's probably not a good time to play "Hang On Sloopy." You know, you just want to be smart about it and be cautious, because the last thing you want to do is have a penalty. I want to say, in all the years that I did Friday night football games, I don't think we were ever penalized. Maybe a warning or two that I can think of, but it's definitely not a situation you want to get into, especially if there's any sort of pre-existing animosity between you and the football coach or football staff. Yes?
Did the band conduct in the stands, or did the drum major?
That's a great question. I always had the drum major whenever possible conducting the stands. Now, sometimes the environment did not allow that, and we couldn't get drum major, ladder, or podium in the right spot, or the stands were such that it just wasn't going to work. Or, unfortunately, where the band was sitting was kind of right in the middle of the away crowd, so parents were walking, like football parents were all over the place. It just wasn't practical, so we had to figure some things out. But yes, during football games, I tried as much as possible to have a drum major. Good. There was another question, too. Yes?
It was kind of in addition to that, and it's more comment than a question, but maybe if, like, as the band, marching band instructor, you need to know football so that you know what you're looking at, so you know when to play and when not to play. That's the addition part. But also, have you noticed any good ways of having the band like the football team? Because I know my band hated the football team so bad that they didn't care about the football, and then there was this dichotomy of the school.
I understood completely. I came from a high school program where I went to high school where there wasn't necessarily animosity, but they were just two kind of totally separate entities. Same thing when I taught in Pennsylvania. When I taught in Pennsylvania, when I worked with any groups in Ohio, I haven't seen too many instances where the football team and the band really get along or really interact either before or after the game. There is one school that was right next to where I was teaching in Beaver. It was a little town called Rochester, Pennsylvania. Their band and football team are like BFFs, okay? And they, after the game, especially after a win, they would all be standing there for their school's fight song and alma mater. And I can't remember if they would sing along to the alma mater, probably. And then after that, the percussion section would play some cadences, and the football players would like kind of dance in front of the band and whoop it up and get really. It was an incredible relationship. So as far as how to make your program have that relationship with your football team, honestly, I think it starts at the top. I think if the band kids and the football team sees you and the football coach coexist and interact in a positive way, and I'm not talking about sitting at a table, drinking coffee together on a after school one day. I'm just talking about if they see you before a game, shake hands, wish each other luck. I'm saying if at a pep rally there's a positive interaction at all. I think it really starts there. And if they see that, I'm cool with him and he's cool with me, then hey, everything must be okay, or that's kind of neat. That's different. I've never seen that before because chances are a lot of kids probably haven't seen that type of positive relationship. And then it's all about just being supportive at the football games. And I know sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But if the band is very verbal about not wanting to be in football games, if they're very verbal about being miserable and this stinks, and I'm not talking at the game, I'm talking about in the halls, in class. If students are being very negative about the football team, then what do you expect the football players, how do you expect them to react? I mean, they're not going to be super excited about you guys either. So it's about being positive. It's about, you might not like football, so don't say anything at all, but it's about being positive and being supportive of the game, cheering for the football team, playing for the football team, getting excited when the football team scores. If the football team makes the playoffs, I know, not fun to march outside in December, but if they make the playoffs, be willing and excited about playing at that 7 a.m. pep rally before school. Be willing, and it's tough. You've got to dig deep sometimes. I know, I've been there. Gosh, my school in PA made the playoffs probably 5 years or 4 years in a row. I don't know. But if you just dig deep, you stay positive, that's what you tell your band students. Hopefully it rubs off. Hopefully there is at least there is not a negative relationship. Maybe there's no relationship, but none is better than a negative one. So certainly just being positive, being supportive, and kind of taking the high road if there's ever any confrontation or animosity. Braden, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just want to add another force to that, too. Cheerleaders. Our past 2 years, we had a new cheerleading coach, and she really wanted to get involved with what we were doing. We came up with a lot of cheers, and right next to our band was the student section. And I think, and I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but my junior and senior year, I felt that we just had a bigger camaraderie between the cheerleader section, the student section next to us, which is just a great positive thing.
Absolutely, and I will get to your statements or questions in a second. That brings up a great point. Cheerleaders. Okay? Cheerleaders. You know what? I was telling Braden this at some point today. There's so much that goes into just marching band. I mean, random times during the day throughout the past week, I'm like, okay, I've got to write that down to talk about it, or I've got to add that to the outline. I never once thought of cheerleaders, so thank you, Braden. Yes, cheerleaders are absolutely part of the football game environment, part of the pep rally environment, and again, if you have a positive relationship with the cheerleading advisors or advisor, that everyone's happy, okay? You can compromise, if the cheerleaders want you to learn a certain tune or want you to play something special, it's okay. Especially, it's probably going to be pretty simple, okay? It probably won't take up a lot of time, just do it. Or if you want the cheerleaders to learn a dance to one of the tunes, your kids know really well, it's all about compromise, it's all about positive relationships, because it just isn't worth it, having a bad one. It just isn't, because you're around them every Friday night. Probably Friday afternoon or Friday morning, whenever pep rallies happen. It's the same thing with football players. Just be positive, be supportive, as hard as it may be, and take the higher road. If you hear cheerleaders talking about smelly band kids, and you are one of those smelly band kids, then just brush it off. Okay, take the higher road. Okay. Lots of hands. Yes.
This is going back a little bit, but what about football players marching?
Okay, yeah, football players marching you can handle on an individual basis. I've pretty much seen it all. I've seen players in shoulder pads, full equipment, minus helmet, marching a trombone around the field. I also have seen or heard of football players being in the band program, but just not having to do Friday night performances. Maybe they do the other festivals, parades. That's something that you hopefully have the power as director to kind of handle, along with any sort of protocol the school has. If it's an academic, if marching band is part of the academic class of band, then you just have to get creative as far as, okay, if I'm going to let Joe miss every Friday night performance, then he has to do something to make up for all that time that everyone else is putting in. So I think there's a certain amount of flexibility involved, and you can handle it on a case-by-case basis. And sometimes it works out where if it's a JV player, maybe they don't dress on Friday so they can march, but they have games Saturday, or something along those lines. Yes?
This goes with
So I don't really understand. Do you like pick a show theme at the beginning of the year and then that's what you do every Friday forever the whole year? Or does it change?
Right. I don't know how we got from show design to cheerleaders. I really don't. Thank you for bringing us back. Yes, show design. That is really up to you. I shouldn't say most. A lot of bands, especially competitive bands, start designing their show in January, February, March, coming up with ideas, getting the ball rolling as far as conceptually with the drill, with the music, especially if it's going to be custom designed or custom arranged. Or if you do stock arrangements, if you buy them from Volkwines or whatever music shop, you can pick a show and do that whole show, and then maybe add an extra song for homecoming if you have to play when the homecoming court is coming by. Or if you have a game around Halloween, you can take out one of the songs you have been doing and plug in Halloween, Frankenstein, or some tune like that. So it's really up to you, and that's the cool thing about getting a head director job is, of course, you want to take into account tradition and what's been done in the past and all that, but you can do what you want to do. And it's really interesting when you have a staff that you get along with that can bounce ideas off them, and you can get really creative. Or you can go to the store, pick out the newest release show that comes packaged together, 8 minutes of music, and just go. I mean, you can put as much time and energy and effort into designing a marching band show as you can anything else. Programming a concert for a concert band or orchestra, or any of that.
What do you do? Like, do you do a show and then just stick with that the whole year?
That's a really good question. I like to brainstorm with the other people on staff. And I also left out, some of my best friends were the ones that arranged my music and wrote my drill. So there was constant dialogue and texting and emails and phone calls. So I like to pick an idea or a theme. For example, one of the last years I was teaching at Beaver, we did a show called On the Air. And it was a show, basically, each tune was a different radio station. So we did, what did we do? Our opener was Marriage of Figaro. Our next tune was Our Angel by Sarah McLachlan, the dog commercial. And it is sad. It's sad. And then after that, we did Free by Chicago. And then after that, we did Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. So it was like a hodgepodge of tunes, but I picked a theme and matched the songs to that. You can do it the other way around too. You can pick one style of music and do like an all jazz show or an all classical show or an all rock show. Like I said, we could talk forever about design elements and brainstorming. It's sometimes, I know a lot of directors just get the Hal Leonard CDs. I'm pretty sure they still send those out to all of the directors. And you listen through some CDs and you go, oh wow, that show or that song is really great. I want to do that. And that's okay. I mean, you can pick whatever you want. It's really a matter of your own personal taste, what you think is going to set the kids up for success. If you cater to the football crowd, it's going to get them fired up. If you're competitive, what you think is going to score well. I wish I had, this is how you do it, but there's so many ways. And again, we're all creative people. That's why we're in the arts. So we should embrace it. We should have fun with it. I know designing the show can be stressful for the most part. So, yes?
I need to go back to the cheerleaders.
That's all right. Cheerleaders are awesome. Yes.
At my high school, we had a pretty good working relationship between the football and the cheerleaders, the entire football program. But the problem that we had though, the cheerleaders, we had like drum line, we had cadences like crazy. And the cheerleaders had dances to cadences. And the cheerleaders were like really passionate about these dances to the cadences.
I understand.
So they're all constantly requesting them. But our band director, we usually probably played like maybe play that cadence once. But the cheerleaders were like, play it again, play it again. How do you handle that situation with the cheerleaders? You have that relationship, but they're like, we want to do it
Right.
like once every quarter.
Right. And I think a lot of that has to deal with kind of who's steering the ship. I know if in my band, if a couple kids were like, let's play this song, let's play this song. No, like, you don't decide that, okay? I do, so just relax, okay? I wouldn't be that short. Well, maybe I would with some kids, but it's like, you know, just because they want to do it doesn't mean you have to. So I would hope that if there are, first of all, I don't know how cheerleaders would get that close to you guys as a band, that they would be hounding you. You know what I mean?
Like they would be, they're on the track.
Okay, so they were real close, real close.
Because it was the marching band, the student section, and the cheerleaders on the track.
Okay, I would hope that the cheerleading advisor would be like, easy ladies, let's, you know, I got this.
The cheerleaders called it cheers they did. They had like a binder that the coordinator was there to make sure that they were in line, but the cheerleaders called it.
I would, in as professionally but as direct as possible, try to explain to the cheer captain or whoever's in charge if the advisor isn't, that, you know, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do. We are willing to play this cadence twice, but we can't do it any more than that. Maybe in the future, you know, again, in a politically correct way, you have to compromise. And that's frustrating that you have to do that with a student, but I guess sometimes you have to. But I would, and then maybe after that, talk with the student, find the advisor and be like, hey, you know, your cheerleaders were really enthusiastic, but they were constantly requesting things that we just can't do. So is there any way we can figure this out and work together? But again, it all goes back to not overreacting and not, you know, losing it and, you know, turning around to the cheerleaders and going, no, we're not going to do it. Shut up. Like, no. Now that you would do it better. You just have to keep your cool. I've seen some rough things. So just yeah, compromise is the answer. Yes.
Yeah, maybe something to solve that is at my high school, we had stand teams and stuff like the cheerleaders had dances too. But then also during third quarter, like my band would have the whole band would like have free time or whatever, go watch the football game. And then the drum line was required to go play in front of the student section, and then they would just rock out. And the student section loved it. That was like their favorite time, and the cheerleaders had dances to all the cadences.
Yeah.
And third quarter was just dance to the drum line.
Absolutely. That's a really, really good solution. And again, the more you can work with cheerleaders, not necessarily with the students, but the more you throw that student section, they loved rocking out like that, okay? You can make that call. Just because it hasn't been done before, just because it isn't tradition, doesn't mean you can't start that. And a lot of times, they work out really well. I know for a couple of years, I started during the third quarter pulling like 8 wind players or 8 brass players and walking around like the football complex and just playing the fight song to the people in the concession stand or whatever. And that was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And I stopped doing it like after a couple of years, and wouldn't you know it, I got like emails, administrators stopped me in the hall, hey, why'd you stop having the kids play? I was like, I don't know, I didn't realize it was that popular, and it really was. So there's nothing wrong with doing those little things to boost, you know, your reputation, the image of the program, and you know, that camaraderie, because that's really, Friday nights, that's what it's about. It's about supporting your school and community and getting into it. Yes?
Is it possible to be a coach or assistant coach and still run the band program, or do those people conflict?
They absolutely don't conflict. Obviously, being a football coach might not work out so well, although I mean, it'd be interesting to hear of an instance. But if you have the time, are you talking about any other sports? Or?
Soccer probably.
Okay, that might be tough too, but it's all a matter of balance. If you have that much free time, then more power to you. I don't know that you could be a head marching band director and a soccer coach. Maybe if you were like a staff member, if you were a woodwind instructor, or if you were adjunct to the marching band but not the person, I could see that being more likely. But that would be tough to balance because marching band, as we've talked about, is very involved. So other hands are up. Yes?
So probably more than other settings, marching band is one where instrument safety can become a concern. So as the year goes on, say, for instance, in a situation where the football team makes the playoffs and you're playing in December, what weather conditions or whatever would constitute unsafe environments for the instruments?
That's a really good question. And again, one that was not a part of my notes. So thank you very much. Environments absolutely has to be taken into consideration when we're playing, because it's an outdoor activity. Most of the time, everything's fine. As far as temperature, I know it gets really hot during band camp and over the summer. If you go to the playoffs, it can get really chilly. I have never been a part of any situation where safety has been an issue with like brass players. Okay, I'm not sure what temperature that everything needs to be to have it be dangerous, but I have never had issues. And I think as long as you keep air moving through your instrument, even on those really cold November or early December days, if you're getting ready to perform for halftime, keeping air moving, keeping the mouthpiece maybe inside if you're wearing gloves, inside your glove, doing anything you can personally to make it a little more comfortable. Because I don't know that I know a situation where it's unsafe, so I can't give you a specific answer about that. But what I can answer is, please be aware of the effects of rain on instruments. Some band directors are very, very stubborn, and regardless of whether it's a monsoon, we are playing outside, and we are going to march in. I don't care if you play the flute or if you play electric guitar, we are playing in the rain. And I've got a great story about this, guys. I know you're waiting. My first year, my very first football game, it's an away game, and I'm nervous, as it is, okay? I'm freaking out, okay? And it's pouring. Pouring. And it's a grass field, but the drainage was kind of okay. And time is winding down in the second quarter. We're first up. And I still hadn't made the call whether we're going to do a standstill or we're going to march. And there's 3.5 minutes left in the second quarter. And I run over to where the home band is. And I knew the director a little bit. He was a little bit older than me. I think he was a YSU graduate as well. And I run over to him and I'm like, Nate, what do you want me to do? I mean, this is your field, it's raining, what should we do? He goes, have a march, do it! And I'm like, oh God, okay, all right. So I go over to my kids and I'm like, we're marching! And their jaws drop. Well, I had a front ensemble, a pit, that played, and part of my pit was a synthesizer, okay? I don't know why I did this, guys. I can't justify this, except I was not thinking. Even though it was raining, I had two band parents hold a plastic sheet over the synthesizer, okay? Okay? So the synthesizer didn't get too wet, and the connection was fine, and we played our show, and whatever. Well, we get finished with the show, we're coming off the field, and we're watching the other band. And I walk over to little Johnny, who was our synthesizer player, freshman. I go, John, is everything okay? He goes, yeah, the show went all right, but at one point I felt this zap go through my braces, and I almost freaked out. And I was like, John, I'm glad you're okay, you did a good job. And I turn around and I probably started hyperventilating. First game, first halftime performance. Okay, what should I have done? No electronics when it's raining hard. Common sense. But I was so preoccupied with having a good first performance, and I had a smaller band. We never had more than 60 kids, so we had electronics in the pit, and I wanted to sound good, and I wanted to look good, so I'm just like, yeah, let's do this. Not thinking I could electrocute a student. I will never ever forget that as long as I live. After the show, I felt the zap in my braces. It's like, so, yes, you have to be very aware of your environment. So I would recommend, if it's raining hard, not having your woodwinds go out. It's not worth it having other pads fall out, because guess who gets to fix it? Okay, chances are you, especially if you want them to have that instrument for rehearsal the next week or for the performance the next week. Because you know, in the fall, music repair shops get very, very busy. So, again, err on the side of caution. If it's sprinkling out or if they get a little bit wet, just when they go to put their instruments away, have them put them in the case is open, or have them out so that they can dry them off as much as possible by hand. And I'd recommend this for brass instruments, especially percussion instruments. Dry off your equipment if you want it to last. It's a simple matter of taking care of what you spent all that money on. Okay, so be sensitive to your environment, but don't, as far as cold weather, maybe some of you have known times where brass mouthpieces have been an issue, or if reeds, trying to play on a reed instrument and it's frozen to the actual mouthpiece or something. If it's that cold, I feel bad for you guys. You know, I would hope that that wouldn't happen. So I would just, it's more of the student's responsibility to make sure it stays warm, and you can tell them what to do as far as where to keep the mouthpiece so that that doesn't happen. Sorry, yes, your hand was up.
Yeah, no, just along those lines of instruments, I mean, it's obvious to us, like, obviously, we're not gonna take our thousands of dollars worth of, you know, awesome instrument out of the marching field. Kids don't think about that, and neither do their parents, because they don't understand. So it's really important to convey, like, don't take your, you know, $3 grand clarinet made of wood to the marching field. Like, buy a cheap plastic one to take into the stands, because kids don't pay attention. They kick their clarinets, they kick the flutes, like, I mean, we had flutes that literally fell down through the cracks of our stands, down onto the cement below.
Absolutely, and you know, I know when it came to buying equipment for my marching band, when it came to pit front ensemble equipment, marching percussion equipment, marching brass like mellophones, baritones, sousaphones, or tubas, I got good stuff if we had the money. If we couldn't afford the good stuff, I wasn't willing to get. You know, I wasn't going to outfit my band with first act mellophones if they made first act mellophones, okay? I wanted good equipment. So along those same lines, with student-owned equipment, if you've got kids that have Bach trumpets and, you know, top-of-the-line Selmer saxophones and whatnot, Yamaha saxophones, and all that good stuff, that's great, but hopefully they talk to you before that investment is made, and that's definitely something to convey. If they're a marching band, do that at your own risk, because it'd be great for everyone to have professional grade instruments on the field, but you know, I don't know that when my children get older, if I buy them nice instruments, I will freak out if they go outside, because I know firsthand what happens to them. So, you know, that's a great point. You have to explain to parents that the marching environment is not the same as a concert, so it's great to make the investment, but it might be a wise idea to keep that student model, or keep that plastic clarinet, or keep that student model. Yes?
And for Kennesaw Mountain, you saw them marching 8 bass clarinets. You know, that's $80,000. That's only if you live in Georgia. We don't march big wooden instruments here. We don't march bassoons and wooden oboes and bass clarinets very often, because the temperature changes and the humidity changes kill those instruments. They're all going to break and split in half. We tend to march metal things, but it's great to have a squadron of bass clarinets playing Tchaikovsky excerpt, but that is not what this part of the country marches.
It's not what this part of the country marches, and it just isn't really practical for many of the ensembles and many of the bands around here. Like, I had 60 kids in my band. Okay, I would rather have an extra trumpet out there than make someone switch to bass clarinet. Or I would rather have regular B-flat, you know, another B-flat clarinet to maybe reinforce some melodic lines, which is kind of what we want, than having, you know, bass clarinet bop around out there. So it's just using kind of, it is common sense, but it's musical knowledge that you all already have. I mean, it just, as artistic as maybe some of you want to be, depending on your backgrounds, and as cerebral as maybe you want your show, they're just, you know, I almost feel a little bit like that about Barry saxes. I don't buy them on the field, but a Barry sax doesn't reinforce the bass line nearly as much as another tuba or a sousaphone would, or even an electric bass. So if you've got Barry saxes that you feel comfortable with being out on the field, or you have a woodwind section enough to where it makes sense to have because you've got a ton of altos and you've got some tenors, and hey, let's throw the Barry out there, we can do a sax feature and it'll be great, then great, do it. But it's not the most practical, I guess, instrument to have out on the field. Yes?
I noticed with Kennesaw Mountain that for the majority of the show, they're moving at a really good pace. And as you get up to around 180, 190, there's no doubt physical condition you need to be in to move that well. At what point do you introduce that to the kids? Like, you need to be in decent shape to do this, and how do you reinforce that?
Wow, that's a really good question. I know that my last couple of years, I want to say, in the spring when we were introducing marching band, especially to the new members, I had a couple of nurses that were band parents, and they put together some really interesting sheets as far as how important dehydration is, how important eating right is, and how important exercise is, because marching band can be such a physically demanding activity. And even Ohio University, okay, that's not easy what they did. You have to be in shape to move that much and that quickly in time together. I mean, so that's a really great point. I don't think it's ever too early to start talking about that. Now, if you are in charge of a program where you don't see yourself moving like that, then I don't know how much pressure needs to be put. I don't want to say pressure, but certainly being physically fit is something we should talk about. And obviously marching band is a great way to get people off of their rear ends and get them active, you know, especially people that otherwise might not be involved in anything. But if you are going to have a competitive program, I would say one of the best things to do is, once you've established your marching technique, just for a couple of laughs, if your opener is 172 at the end, and you've only been marching like 144, you've been maxing that out, say, okay guys, we're gonna go opener tempo, turn it up to 172, do your basics exercise. When they're huffing and puffing, you say, well guys, this is the tempo that we need to be at, this is where we're working towards. You know, we need to make more of a concerted effort to be able to execute this. So you're going to accomplish that through yourself, building strength and endurance through your own basics program, but certainly suggesting physical activity out of band. I know for a couple summers we did band PT over the summer when I was teaching at Beaver, and sometimes we'd get 3 kids, sometimes we'd get a dozen, but you know, at least we had some kids participating, because I was noticing that too. You know, we were getting to the beginning of October and I still wasn't seeing the type of endurance and strength and stamina that I wanted for my kids. So you have the freedom to do whatever you want. Just be careful. If you walk in and start saying, okay, starting June 5th, every Monday, we've got band physical training. That's what you're going to get. Whoever laughed, okay, they're going to be like, okay. So again, it's kind of like I mentioned with the punishment. If you build that strength and endurance through your basics program, you're going to have more success, I think, than trying to mandate this workout regimen. But I would definitely encourage it. I would definitely give them ideas as far as what to do. You know, a lot of times bands aren't as lucky as drum corps. They don't have physical therapists and nutritionists like some of them do now to work with them. But encouraging physical fitness, number one, and then using your basics program to help you get to where you want to be would be the best bet, I think. Because otherwise they will chuckle at you. And I got laughs when I tried to do it. And it wasn't even mandatory. Yes?
What type of program or initiation do you have for freshmen?
Good question. So, and I think the schedule that I not sent to you, but the schedule that is available to you to look at, maybe you can have some things on there. But I would always have a new member meeting for students and parents in the spring, usually end of April-ish, beginning of May-ish. And I would explain everything about marching band. I would have some current students there, probably the upcoming season's drum major there, to talk about marching band, talk about their experiences, and talk about how much they love marching band. And sometimes it took a little bit of coaching to those students from me, saying, okay, as much as you're going to want to say how hot it is at band camp, don't, okay? Because we want kids to join. So we had students, myself, students, and any other staff members there, current band boosters there. And we would talk to these prospective members and parents, let them know, what was going on. Then right after school left out, we had what I would call mini camp or rookie camp, where for 3 days, right after school was out, so it's still kind of, their chops are still okay, things are still okay, I'll just say that. We'd get them in like 9 to 12:30 or 9 to 1, and we would teach them a lot of what we did this morning as far as stationary commands, how to march. We would put as much together as we could outside as far as marching, and then inside we work through our warm-up program and our playing program, get them familiar with it, pass out the music for the season, and take it from there. So we had 3 days of that mini camp. I'll just take you through the summer schedule since I'm talking about it. 3 days of mini camp. Then my students would have the rest of June off to do whatever, vacation, whatever. In July, we would have once a week rehearsals with full band, and then in addition to that, the percussion section in color guard had an extra rehearsal per week. So percussion color guard, 2 wind players, 1 rehearsal per week. And then band camp usually was in August, the first 2 weeks, Monday through Friday at the school, 8 to 4:30, 8 to 5, something like that. They'd have to eat lunch at the school. They were not allowed to leave the school, so they had to brown bag it or someone would have to bring them lunch. And then right after camp, we would start pretty much our usual rehearsal schedule during school, which was Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5:30 to 8 o'clock. And the season started from there. So it was a pretty busy schedule. I know some programs that are a lot busier. I know some programs that don't do anything until band camp. So it's all a matter of what you want personally to do, how much time you want yourself and the kids to invest, and what other outside factors, where are you going to have camp, what facilities are available, what staff members are available. I feel like it's very easy to get locked into a specific schedule every summer, but sometimes you have to be flexible. For example, my last couple of years at Beaver, I left a week. We had camp for 2 weeks straight, but then we had a week where there was nothing because a lot of kids went on vacation in August. So we'd have that 3rd week of August, we had nothing, so that made it coming back when school started a little rough. But in the long run, I had more kids for more of camp because I left that week in August totally open for them to go on vacation with their parents. And the parents really appreciated that. So that was a long answer to freshmen, but we have a specific rookie camp just for new members and section leaders. Or, wait, no, I had everyone there at mini camp, didn't I?
Yeah.
But a lot of bands have just freshmen and section leaders. My bands were so small, if I had just freshmen and section leaders, that's like half my band. So I'm like, all right, let's have the whole band come. So, yes.
So this is a question to do with your summer stuff. What do you, since you had like rehearsals like throughout your summer, what did you do with your kids? I don't know if you had this issue or not, who were like super involved with like a summer sport. Like I know I wouldn't have been able to then, so like if my band had summer rehearsals, there's no way I would have been able to do that because my practice was 2.5 hours away 3 times a week, and then I was gone on the weekends.
I kicked him out of band. I'm kidding. Absolutely not. That is going to be one of my points here, and I know we've got a half hour left, but don't say no to any student that shows interest in your program. Please work with them. I don't care how talented or not talented you think they are. Okay, numbers are really important for a variety of reasons. I don't want to get into the philosophy of having lots of kids involved, but just you guys know it's really important. So I had some students that were really involved in tennis, really involved in soccer, really involved in volleyball, really involved in gymnastics that wasn't even a school sport. It was like a private club gymnastics team. And I just worked with them as much as humanly possible. I was really lucky. Those kids that were involved in multiple things are usually really good kids, or really pick up things quickly, very talented, very intelligent. So it wasn't a big deal. If they missed learning drill or putting something together on the field, they were caught up very quickly. And I just maintained open communication with them and their parents. And I made sure that there was as much compromise as possible. When it came down to a band practice or a gymnastics tournament, I'm not going to say don't go to a tournament. Okay? If it comes down to gymnastics practice and a band performance, like a game, then I'm going to ask, is there any way you can come, and most of the time they could commit to band. And then when those tricky situations where you've got athletic game or event, not a practice, but a game and a band performance, you make it work. I know there were a couple of times we're basically on the starting line, we're ready to go out onto the field, and so-and-so is running to their spot because they're coming directly from whatever game, changed in the car. You know what I mean? And those parents, again, those kids are probably used to doing multiple things. The parents are used to it, so they're willing to do what it takes to make it work. And a lot of times the parents value, as much as they value the athletic event, a lot of parents, especially if those kind of kids, really value the arts and really value the fact that their student is involved in the program. So they're going to be willing to work with you. I don't know that I ever had an experience where it was like, nope, we're not committing to band at all. It's going to be sport first, then band. That never happened. Yes.
In a situation where you have they have to choose one or the other, do you let the student and the parent choose, or do you make the decision, like, say, I think you should really put mine, or do you for the most part, leave it up to them?
So you're saying
If
they have to choose?
If they have a big gymnastics event the same day you have a big band performance, in the end, do you try and convince them to come to yours, or do you let them in the end make their own decision without?
I'm not a big person that's really into saying you have to do that. Like that's kind of tough. I mean, I can say, well, there are going to be consequences if you don't come, which is kind of, I don't think that's the same thing. But I can make my case to them. I can tell them what the ramifications might be of them missing. I can be as crystal clear and direct as possible. But ultimately, they're not my property as much as I want them to be, and I want them to do what I say and come be with the band. If mom and dad support the student, say, picking the soccer game, I mean, you really can't, then you can, I guess, take it to the administration and say, look, I've got to affect the student's grade because they, but that's tough. That is a really, really tough position to be put in. And I think maybe worst case, or I guess best case scenario is, okay, if there are 2 instances where that occurs, maybe you pick band for one of them, and I'll let you do soccer the other. You know what I mean? So you have to be delicate with those situations. You have to be you have to articulate your feelings, certainly, but I don't know that you ever want to be such a hard, that you want to turn them off, especially if the parents are usually supportive of the band program, if the students are really, an important part, that's tough. Those are the positions that, I don't envy you guys for very soon being in those positions, because it's tough. That's what you get paid, a really, really big bucks. Socially, it can do wonders. And honestly, how many of you spent a lot of your high school career in the band room or in the music wing, not when you were supposed to, but even on some of your free time? Okay, lunch, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's unbelievable the sense of family, sense of belonging that an organization like Marching Band can foster and can provide. A couple more, if anybody has any. We've covered great points. Yes?
Performance practice, just making every Friday performance.
Absolutely. Performing.
In places where there's not much difference to do, since it's such a big time,
That's, again, it's a little bit tied in socially, okay? Chances are there are good kids in the marching band as far as discipline is concerned, as far as grades and schoolwork are concerned. I don't know how many, over the years that I've been affiliated with various programs, how many valedictorians have come from the band program, and even more specifically marching band. Our student leaders always seem to be really great students and just great people, so why not? Why not have more of your kids be around those kind of kids? So absolutely. One more. Yes.
If you notice out of the administration so that you can pull other strings and everything you do.
Absolutely, that goes kind of along with PR, definitely. The more things you can do in a positive light with your program, the better. So, you agreed to teach marching band. Let's say that you, even if you're not hired as the band director, let's say you are the choir director or you're a middle school band director and there's an opening and you decide to accept it. What do you do next? Let's say it is June, May or June, which is sometimes even a little bit early, but it's June and you're hired. What do you do next? What are some of the things you need to be made aware of or realize right away? Any ideas? You don't have to take notes on all this if you want to, but what are some things you have to do? Like, you get hired, you say, I'm going to do the marching band, and it's June 1st. Number one, I have to, yes, back here.
You have to find out what your resources are.
Absolutely. And what do you mean by resources?
Your uniforms, the instruments you have access to.
Right. And resources is a great term, but it's really broad. Resources can be how much money you have from the school, if any. How much money you have from the band parents, if any. What type of practice facility do you have? Resources can be, what shape are the instruments in? What shape are the uniforms in? You know, down to, at band camp, do the kids have to bring their own lunches? I mean, there are lots of things that go into that, and we'll get a little bit more specific down the road. What are some other things you have to think about?
Time frame for performance or whatever performance you need to be ready by.
Can I make it a little more general? Calendar, okay? Has there been a calendar established? Is band camp set up? Do you have to do that? And then same thing with football games. Who's arranging transportation? Are we going to any festivals? Have those been scheduled prior to you being hired? That is absolutely necessary. A couple more. Brayden.
Who is in your marching band? And also the new members, who's interested?
Right, resources, our kids are like our main resource, okay? So we need to find out, like our roster, who has signed up, who hasn't signed up. I remember my first year that I got my full-time job, I'm a wanderer while I talk too, so I see some of you are like, where's he going? I wander. Yes, my first year, within the first week of getting my job, I called everyone that was on my preliminary roster and said, "Hi, this is Mr. Neer, your band director. Do you still want to do band?" Because I didn't know if they had signed up prior to the old director leaving, so I just felt like I had to make sure I knew who was in my band. And no one told me to do that. I just kind of freaked out. I got a roster and was like, okay, I need to make sure all these kids committed that said they were going to do it, they're going to do it. Someone new. Yes. No, I haven't. No, go ahead.
You have to figure out, in some ways, past traditions and what's been already established in the program. If you try to go from like an OU style program to a Kennesaw Mountain style program in a matter of a week, you're going to get
Okay, that was one of the big things that I wanted to touch on. Know what you're getting yourself into. And I guess everything we've talked about can pile into that category, but traditions are really important. Really important. And it's a really great idea to respect those, to embrace those. And I don't mean to say that you can't change some things about a marching band program, but be very careful what you decide to get rid of. A common thing that us competitive guys like to do, unfortunately, because I have a lot of respect for them, majorettes. Does anyone here have spinning baton experience or is a former majorette? It's okay to raise your hand. Okay, all right. Competitive guys, for some reason, don't really dig the whole majorette thing. So I personally have known a couple directors that go in and they say, majorettes, forget that. They're all going to spin a flag or a saber, or we just don't need them all together. Really, really bad idea, okay? Because chances are majorettes have been part of the band since 1950 when the school opened, and you are going to really make a lot of people angry. So my advice to a decision or a thing like that is roll with it, embrace it for a while. That's not to say maybe after a year or two, during part of your halftime show, they can pick up a flag maybe, or maybe you're cool with them spinning batons during pregame, and then during the halftime performance they can do flag. The important thing is to compromise, because if you just walk in there and say, no, forget about it, you can run into issues. One of the things that I did when I got my first job, and you're going to hear lots of stories like this, was one of the things I did was, there will be no eating concession stand food in uniform. I was like, forget about it, no way. You will be given a snack by the band parents at halftime. And that was like, you're taking away our freedom, our life. What are you doing, Mr. New Year? And I'm not kidding, I'm not exaggerating. That was drama for a 14 and 15-year-old kid, okay? And unfortunately, I did it. I stuck to it. In retrospect, I probably could have weaned them off eating pizza in uniform, but I don't feel bad because that wasn't nearly as big of a deal as getting rid of majorettes or totally changing styles, going from OU to competitive or vice versa. So it's just really important that you pick your battles in that way and that you find out what the traditions have been. Because chances are, if something's been going on for 50 years, most of the time it's okay. It's pretty cool, it's ingrained in the culture, and you just have to be careful. You might not want to get rid of that. That might be kind of a cool thing that someone's parents did in the band when they were there, and now they're passing it down to their kids, and so on and so forth. So you just have to use your best judgment and be very, very careful with that. Anything else? Yes, ma'am?
I guess this kind of ties into a couple of things, like the music that you have to decide on, like the funding for it, what you already have, the style that you think would best fit your instrumentation, or the style of the band.
Absolutely. How many people came from really, really little bands? Like 60 or less people? Okay? Yeah, that's tricky because a lot of times you have to dig a little bit deeper if you're going to do stock arrangements, or a lot of times maybe the director you replaced arranged the music themselves, which is outstanding because maybe it was a smaller band, and that's great if you can do that. I walked into a situation where we hired someone to arrange our music for us, so that was kind of last minute. I had to call this person and say, okay, I think I have this many kids, I want to do this show. Everything was pretty rushed, but that's a great point. Figuring out what kind of music you're going to do, what kind of show you're going to do, how many shows you have to do, and that goes along with tradition. I came from a program back when I was there at Willoughby South. We had one kind of main show, but we did a Halloween show, we did a middle school show, all the music had to be memorized. So it was, you had to get this music picked and out to the students as quickly as possible if you wanted to set them up for success. So knowing all that information really helps. A couple more. This is good. This is very good. Yes, sir?
Getting to know the senior class and the student leaders.
Yes, getting to know the student leaders and the leadership. Has that been selected yet? Has the drum major been picked? Again, when I was first hired, I kept the drum major but ditched the student leaders. Bad choice, okay? I should have handled that a little bit differently. I was very abrupt with a lot of my decisions because, hey, I was 23 years old. I thought I knew a lot more than I actually did. I had this idea in my head that since I marched a couple of years at Drum and Bugle Corps, and I came from a competitive program, and I worked a couple band camps, and I got this figured out. You leaders that you were picked and so excited a couple months ago, you're done. Like it just was up for. I didn't approach it like that, but it was not a good decision. I distinctly remember as a full ensemble telling them we're going to redo the whole leadership picking process, and I hurt some feelings. No one quit because of it, but I know I hurt some feelings. So certainly there was a reason why those students were picked. I should have trusted maybe my predecessor a little bit more, trusted his judge of character, and maybe either gone with it or altered it in a way that wouldn't have been so shocking, I guess. So yes, getting to know your leadership and putting them in place if you don't.
Staff, more so than just the kids and resources, but like who's going to be a percussion head, who's going to be your woodwinds and brass.
Okay, are you from a competitive program? Yeah. Where?
Westerville.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, know about Westerville. He made a really great point. He said, get to know your staff if you have one, and if you don't, you should probably pick one if you have the resources to do so. And I firmly believe that regardless of style, if you're competitive or if you are a show band or what have you, you definitely need, in my opinion, some help along the way. I'm a brass player, I'm a low brass, trombone, baritone player. Feel very comfortable teaching brass of any kind. Feel pretty good about teaching woodwinds. Feel a little shaky about percussion. And when it comes to color guard, I'm being honest, I can do a drop spin, and I can pretend to look like the people on the videos and like throw a rifle in the air and like have this cool look on my face, but it hits me in the head or it lands over here. Like it's a train wreck. So what I'm saying is it's important that you come to grips with your weaknesses, and if you have the resources, hire really good people to make the band better, make you look better, okay, and help your kids succeed. So definitely I would recommend, if you don't already have one, finding a color guard person, flag person, and a percussion person. I was lucky enough, in any teaching situation I've been in, whether it was in Pennsylvania or over in Ohio, I've worked with programs that have been able to have at least one color guard person, probably 2 or 3, at least one percussion person, probably 2 or 3, and then a couple of extra people that we call techs or technicians that help with the drill when it's time to focus on drill, help with the music when it's time to focus on music. Now, I totally understand that if you don't have the financial resources, you kind of have to go with it. I know the first year of the director of Willoughby South, I know his first year he did everything except majorettes. I think he might have even done a little bit of guard at Willoughby South. So you definitely, if it isn't there, it isn't there, but as quickly as you can, get a staff established. These are great things. Yes, ma'am?
As far as staff that's under head or assistant director of marching band, is it more up to you in regards to, like, does the administration say you go hire, here's your budget, or is it a big joint process, or do you decide how much people are paid or how much time they have there?
That's a great question. I think it's all a matter of situation. I think there are certain positions that are school affiliated, like assistant director positions, that you probably have to bid on. So current staff members can bid on that position and accept that position. So I don't know that we'd have a ton of say in it. I mean, a lot of times you do, but maybe sometimes you don't. And as far as what they're paid, it's through the district and it's established by the district. You don't have, it's kind of like an assistant coach or a coach for an athletic team. I think those supplemental contracts are established previous. But then if you have money provided by your band parents for staff, like band camp staff, or maybe you really need an extra flag person, so the previous year you budget $2,000 for an extra color guard staff member, then you definitely have more of a say, I would say, as far as hiring them, but they still have to have security clearances. There are still guidelines that you have to follow that are district mandated if those people are going to be affiliated with your program. So that's kind of how that works. So if it's more the band boosters providing, you have a little more freedom to establish salary and really who you hire, as long as they're, you know, not criminals. So anything else? These are really, really great. I knew we'd get great feedback here. You guys have lots of experiences to share. So lots of things to think about when we first get hired. Okay. Band parents, just talked about it. I'm going to share another story with you. My background is Ohio, and you obviously, all of you were close to your music departments, music programs, whether it was instrumental or choral, what have you. How many of you know for a fact that your band booster or music boosters paid for a lot of things for your programs? Like equipment, music, repairs, staff, all that. Good. Very good. So that's what I was used to. When I walked into my first band parent meeting, again, new director, making changes left and right, and in a nicer way, I walked up to the executive board, it was my turn to talk, and I said, I need some new mellophones. And it was like they all dropped their glasses of water. I mean, it was like I asked them for something major, which it kind of was, but to me, you know, I came from a program where if we wanted really anything substantial, the band parents raised money throughout the year. That's what Tag Day was for. That's what the fruit citrus sale and all this and that was for, was to support my program. And they were angry. I had one parent pull me aside and say, how dare you ask us for instruments? And I was like, wait. Band boosters, band parents supporting the band program. And it turns out that for multiple years before I had arrived, whenever a big purchase was needed, it was taken to the administration, and it was kind of, if it wasn't budgeted, it was kind of the decision was made on an as-needed basis. So if you could, I guess if the director could really prove that these instruments needed replacing or whatever needed replacing, then maybe the board could find money, maybe they couldn't, but they never went to the band boosters, and that was very foreign to me. So just get an idea before you start making outlandish requests. Get an idea of how they operate. Get an idea of maybe how much money they raise and why they raise it, instead of just going in kind of blindly assuming like I did. And again, I wasn't mean about it, but I just said, it would be really great if you could replace some mellophones for us. The 3 that we have are being held together with tape and glue, and I think there's a tennis ball stuck in the bell of one. I mean, it was ridiculous, some of the shape the instruments were in, but that was really shocking to them. And eventually, as the years went by, they got over it to the point where it was actually kind of cool. The last couple of years were like, oh, we have this extra money, what do you want? What can you buy? And that's what you want. You want to get your parents on your side and the administration on your side, and that's coming a little bit later. So band parents, it's super, super important to get a feel for them. Bylaws for band parents, very, very important. Towards the end of my stay over in Pennsylvania, it was brought to my attention that anyone who was going to be around the band students more than once or more than twice had to have security clearances. And that was brand new. Well, if that's not documented somewhere in bylaws, or if there are no bylaws at all, but I'm almost positive every band parent organization has one, you have to just familiarize yourself with them. Don't memorize them, but make sure that they're there. Make sure that if there are any adjustments that the band parents know, because a lot of times the district is not going to communicate that to your parents. So you have to be the liaison, unfortunately. Same thing with your parents as far as those chaperones. It's something to think about when you first get the job. How many chaperones do you have for a performance, like for an away game or a home game? How many chaperones ride the buses? How many chaperones are you going to have for your spring trip that you haven't even planned yet? You know, it's important to, what I found, communicate, again, to your chaperones as early as possible, because it's a lot easier to secure chaperones for bus trips and football games in June, July than it is like the week before, so you're scrambling. So definitely get a handle on what the procedures are for your band parents, definitely. And like I mentioned with the instruments, pick your battles very carefully. Get a feel for them. Another story. Someone should keep track of how many stories I'm telling. But one year, really, really supportive group of parents. And the norm with my band was after our performance at a competition, they would feed us dinner. And it was usually like hoagies and chips, always plenty of food, but it wasn't gourmet. Well, this group of parents got the idea to load a propane tank onto the equipment truck and a burner, and they wanted to serve the kids hot soup on a chilly October evening. And, which is like okay, except I wasn't cool with an open flame in the middle of the parking lot with all these kids around. And I wasn't cool with the tank of propane on the equipment truck. I just wasn't okay with that. Something, it wasn't, in retrospect, it wasn't a big deal, but I was fired up about it. And I said, guys, I think that's a bad idea, let's skip it. Well, it's after the performance, and I'm kind of walking around watching, making sure the kids are behaving themselves. And I see the propane tank, and I see the burner, and I see this big pot of chicken noodle soup, and I freaked out. I mean, I got really, really angry. I took it personally that they didn't do what I wanted them to do. So I was a complete jerk the rest of the night. I know I was. And we ended up making up. Like that next Monday, I got an email apologizing to me, and I apologized to those parents. It was great. But it was good. We made up very quickly, but you know, they were looking out for their kids. They were trying to do a good thing, and I got so bent out of shape because I took it so personally that they disobeyed me. They didn't do what I wanted them to do. But instead of acting immature like I did, I should have maybe talked to them aside and said, you know, why did you decide to do this? I wasn't okay with this. And it would have been fine. But again, pick your battles. Don't overreact. And that's kind of a main theme to a lot of what we're going to talk about. Administrators. What power does the administration have over us as band directors?
Our job.
Okay, what's your name?
Sally.
Sally, that's right. Sally said, our job, and okay, absolutely, okay, it's not quite that cut and dry, but yes, they are our superiors. But what can they do or not do for us?
They can remove or add funding to your program.
Absolutely, they control a lot of times the dollars. Okay, what else? Anything? Nothing else?
Publicity.
Publicity, absolutely, if they're on your side. Absolutely. They can be huge advocates for you and your program. What else?
They may be in different spaces, so make sure you have a space like that.
That is fantastic. Where are you from? Nice. Competitive program? Not competitive?
And marching at my high school.
All right. Very nice. Booking spaces. okay, out of all of those things that we just mentioned, one of the things that I was most frustrated with my situation in Pennsylvania was lack of a consistently safe place to rehearse. Most of the time, we rehearsed in a parking lot that had light posts, okay? Not okay, like on the field. So if you're doing a backward march, okay, just good luck. I mean, I don't know. Like, seriously, I mean, it was almost to the point where I had to tell our drill writer, okay, we've got posts on like 35, 2 steps outside, and it was horrible. We had a turf field, okay, and lots of green space around our school, but this terrible parking lot with lots of potholes as well. And cars that would totally ignore our barriers and would park there anyway. Like, we rehearsed from 5 to 8 or 5 to 7. At 4:35, 3 cars would pull in and park right on the 50-yard line. And it was like, or when I wasn't there, if no one was watching, they'd park and I didn't know how to get in touch with them because they were either in a weird part of the school that I couldn't get in touch with, or they were over at the stadium, or they were in the center. Miserable. So it was a battle for years to get stadium time. And it wasn't until I developed a certain rapport, a certain relationship with the athletic director, he started kind of telling some of the groups that initially he had put in front of us as far as priority for the field, he started telling them, sorry, the band's got the field, or the band is here. Or when there was a conflict and the midget football, community football team trotted on the field in the middle of my rehearsal, and the athletic director was here, I could count on him to defend me and say, what are you doing? If I didn't have a good relationship with him, which I didn't necessarily have a bad relationship with, my first year or two was just kind of, we didn't know each other too well. I probably came across as a pompous young teacher, which I probably was. It just wasn't good. It wasn't good. So those relationships with the space, rehearsal space, and maybe even if you want to schedule a festival that you host, getting those arrangements made, man, your athletic director is super key, as are your principals. Another thing is discipline. And if I would have asked, someone would have said it, but to have the administration on your side and aware that you have a handbook and slightly familiar with it really makes a difference, because if you are at wit's end with this one kid that just will not do what you want them to do, and every band, I don't care how good the band is, has at least one or a little group of just marching band rebels that's like, I'm not going to do what you say, I'm not going to lift my toes when I march, I'm going to dig them into the ground. And it's like, are you serious? If you have disciplinary issues, administrators, if they are your friends, real bad. It makes life a lot easier. You don't feel like you're out on an island by yourself dealing with these kids. Sometimes when push comes to shove, you need to get them involved, or really any issue. I had another story, I'm sorry. Most of them occurred my first year, which is great. Had an issue where we're at a football game, okay, and everything's fine, I think. And I have a male chaperone sitting behind a row of students. And one of the students was acting inappropriately, obviously, and was not listening. I was down front in front of the band, so I wasn't really addressing the situation. The chaperone was trying to address the situation. Well, the student wasn't listening to the chaperone. So finally, the chaperone grabbed the kid, not in a headlock, not in an aggressive way, but literally put his hands like on the shoulders and was like, knock it off. Well, this kid overreacted and like turned and kind of elbowed, not to hit him, but to get his arms off of his shoulder. Okay, it turned into an issue. Got the chaperone and the student separated, was trying to talk to the chaperone about how that is totally inappropriate to put your hands on a student, because it is. And the father of the student saw this happen from afar. You touch my kid? And all of a sudden it was on. Like, okay? And so for about 3 minutes, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, I was frozen. I was in this is probably the 3rd or 4th football game of my teaching career. And I'm like, I don't know what to do right now. And luckily for me, and I'm all of 5'8", and was probably, old age has caught up with me, but I was probably 15 or 20 pounds lighter even then, so I'm this kind of smallish kind of guy. And these two dads want to duke it out, and I'm freaking out. So one of the other band dads came down and kind of got between them and was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I bolted, found the closest administrator, who was thankfully like, 15 yards to my right. Grabbed me, was like, you need to come with me right now. And we got the situation resolved. But again, even though it was early in my career, if you have administrators you get along with, who are supportive, that makes life way easier. And you don't have to get in the middle of band dads fighting, which is always a good thing. I have never been a part of a band mom fight, thankfully. But only band dads. Okay. Does anyone, up to this point, does anyone have any questions? I just talked for like 40 minutes straight. Okay, yes, Brady.
Can you talk about with the band parents about how the meetings ran and about how often you have your meetings?
Absolutely. Does anyone know? How often do the band parents usually get together?
I know in my program, our band boosters met bi-weekly, like every 2 weeks on a Monday from like 7 to 8 or something like that, for like an hour, just to like see what had been happening, and that was just during, I think, like football season, and then every other, like after football season, it's like once a month.
Yeah, that's pretty serious bi-weekly. The way the band parents worked at my school and most schools, I think, they pick like the second Wednesday of every month, and they meet usually in the band room. It's an open invite for all boosters. It usually is like an hour and a half to 2 hour meeting, depending on what needs to be discussed. I chose to be there for every meeting, unless I absolutely had to miss it. My predecessor did not go to meetings. I don't really know why. That was just the message that was sent to me when I went to my first meeting. What are you doing here? And I'm like, it's a band booster meeting. So-and-so didn't come to these. It was like, that boggled my mind, because it's not so much that you want to hang out with the boosters. I mean, they're great people, but it's you are the liaison between what's going on in the program and the administration to them. Also, if you want special requests, or if you have an update about an upcoming performance or a rehearsal that's added to the schedule, it was always really beneficial to get like the boosters on your side before you made that change. At the meeting, before you made a general announcement where you sent a letter out to everyone, it's always good to run things through the executive board of your boosters. But definitely once a month, we hosted a competition for a couple of years. We hosted some concert band festivals. If you're doing special events like that, you're going to meet more often. But typically, it's once a month. And really, again, great things to be a part of, because and along the same lines, I know I mentioned if you're doing something new, it's good to articulate it to them first. Okay, it's also really, really important to get some feedback, because if what you're doing isn't necessarily embraced, I always liked it because I would share show ideas for the upcoming fall with some of my parents. And it was great to get their reaction, because chances are we usually ended up picking a show where everyone was like, oh yeah, that's cool, that's great, versus, oh, that sounds awful. And then well, it's a pretty good, clear indication, that might not fly with their kids. So again, they're a good sounding board as well. Any other questions? No. Yes.
I guess my experience with band boosters has always been that they're almost, like, I saw them in my classes, like,
parents,
walking through, doing things, adjusting uniforms for people every class, and every rehearsal they'd be lined up in the front, like, talking about us. Is that common? That they're kind of invited to do work while you're teaching?
That's a very, very good question. When it came to rehearsals, especially outside of the school day, I had an open door policy. If a parent wanted to come and see what their child was doing, if a parent for some reason, especially if it's a younger band student, we did march some 8th graders, if they're just leery of their students spending so much time in an organization because it's their first time doing something like that, I'm totally cool with it. It's kind of like if you teach private lessons, maybe some of your parents of your students like to sit in once in a while for the first lesson. That's totally okay, and I would embrace that. As far as parents coming and lining up on the sidelines and watching rehearsal, it depends on the program. The program I'm working with now, Kiski area over in Pennsylvania, very, very competitive program. At the end of rehearsal, there's always at least a dozen and a half, 2 dozen parents there that want to watch the end of rehearsal and hype the kids up before the beginning of their final run-through for rehearsal. You know, so it really depends on what the culture has been kind of built into. Now, during the school day, it happened occasionally, like uniform fittings, alterations, or there was a fundraiser that all of the frozen pizzas and cookie dough had to be delivered to the school at 2 p.m. Well, I've got class. I can't go hang out with a pizza delivery guy. Okay, so a band parent or group of band parents would come and handle that. So I don't know that it's as common during the school day, but if your school district is okay with it, having strange people in your music area or music wing, and in today's day and age, that's something you have to be careful about. I know that schools are really, rightfully so, are really tightening down on who they let in the building and when. So if your parents want to do that, I know usually band rooms and band music wings have separate doors or auxiliary doors or spaces where people can come in and out kind of without being noticed. I would really shy away a little bit from that. If you have parents or outsiders coming in, have them follow the rules and go to the front office and get a visitor tag or sign in or whatever they have to do. It's annoying and frustrating and it takes time. But again, you want administrators on your side. You don't want to give anyone affiliated with the administration, school board, administration, even colleagues, any reason to doubt what you're doing or question what you're doing. So when all else fails, follow the rules, absolutely, to a T. Questions? Any other? Yes?
For my program, the boosters were this group of, in this case, I came from a very country area. They were a bunch of stay-at-home moms who, in this case, wanted to kind of hover over the kids. And that was their function. They kind of hovered and they just kind of got in the way. And I happen to know a few people who tried to come in while I was in school and had a lot of experience in the business world and things like that. They raised a lot of money, but that created a lot of animosity in the booster program because they had their way that they wanted to do it. And then these people actually came in and did things, so it was intimidating to them.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that animosity?
Again, that's a great question. Unfortunately or fortunately, however way you slice it, starting at a certain age in our lives, groups and cliques form. And as you go through school, you see them, and certain cliques coexist and intermingle, and others don't. And then probably you've now reached the collegiate level, and you've noticed maybe even within your school of music, within your conservatory, there are cliques, there are groups of people, and there's sometimes drama, and it makes you shake your head, and it's all silly at the end of the day. I wish I could tell you that once you hit adulthood or once you become a parent, it's different. But a lot of times, those same kind of drama-ridden issues follow along. So when you get into a group like band parents, just like the kids, the band, they spend so much time together, there's a certain camaraderie, and when things go wrong within the band, like everyone feels it, and when there's drama, it can be, the littlest things can be way blown up. I feel like band parents can be similar. I totally get it. They're a tight-knit group. Personal experience has taught me that the executive board is going to be really tight. Okay, the president, vice president, secretary, they're going to want to be the ones to do everything. And for some reason, there's hesitancy to include your run-of-the-mill mom or dad that maybe doesn't have a lot of time to commit, but wants to once in a while. So I totally get what you're saying, and I think that's where you come in as the liaison, now not between administration and parents or student and parents, but between groups of parents. You know, unfortunately, sometimes it takes you, the director, the head of the program, saying, you know, so-and-so's mom and dad have run their own business for 15 years, and they've done really well. They have this great idea for fundraising, or this great accounting software for student trip accounts, or they have this really great way of organizing the uniform room, or something, and you just kind of have to be willing to take the heat for those new parents. You have to say, you know, I want it done their way. It's not the only way it was bad, but I really like this, so can we try to implement this system? And most of the time that works, because after all, we're dealing with adults, and certainly I always expected my parents to, if there were grudges, kind of get over it and coexist for the kids. It's for the kids. It's for the program. You know, the boosters, the band parents support the director and the mission the director has set forth for the students. So that is how I approached it. That's how I would encourage you to approach it. If there's a terribly awful situation, don't hesitate to get the administration involved too. Okay, if you ever feel like that there's a situation with parents, not just students, but parents that you either can't handle or, all right, this is getting out of control, then bring the administration in. Again, communicate with them. Don't give the administration any doubt, because if they hear, gosh, there's a lot of infighting in your parent organization. I heard so-and-so, but before a school board meeting, just totally bad-mouthing it, you don't want that to happen. So you be the messenger of bad news if there hopefully isn't any, but if there is, be the messenger there. Yes?
So in our school district, we had some issues with, you know, we had a really good principal that was all for the arts, and band was considered more of an academic, you know, class. And then we switched, and you got this old coach that, you know, I was like, oh, football team gets a day off, but the marching band doesn't, that type of thing. And so academics was kind of a joke for the band class. And I guess where I'm going with that is that our band, I mean, like, I know from my marching band how to not run a marching band. That's just the program I came from. But how do you go about doing like grades for that? Since it isn't as silly as it sounds, is it just participation or, you know, attendance? I mean,
So
testing music?
your question is, how do you assess a marching band class? That, very good. For the first 5 years I was at my position in Pennsylvania, marching band was tied in to the class, meaning if you signed up for band, you know, in the spring of the previous year, you registered for it, you were in the marching band. Unless there was a super major conflict, you had a physical issue or some sort of, and I'm not being sarcastic, but like a religious issue, like if you had some big deal, then maybe exceptions were made, but otherwise you were in the marching band. So that was definitely, I was in that kind of same boat. I had to figure out a way to evaluate and assess marching band students. So I will tell you that a lot of it was based on attendance / participation. Okay, a lot of it was based on knowledge of music. Okay, and don't be afraid to have. We call them in Willoughby, we call them pass-offs. I don't know if you've heard that term before. Or playing tests, or playing quizzes, or music checks, or however, you know. And they can be. And you might be asking, well, how do you do that for like your whole band? You're dealing with maybe 8th graders and 9th graders, and then you're dealing with seniors that are really, really strong players. You can develop a tiered system that on September 1st, Group A's need to have this much memorized. Group B's, who maybe are intermediate or not as strong players, need to have this much down. And then the beginners, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can tier the system.
You put them individually where you think they are.
Absolutely. So you can have 4 groups, 3 groups, 2 groups, however you want, and assess them musically. You can also, when it comes to participation and attendance, both rehearsal-wise and performance-wise. And what would happen is if a student had an excused absence for a performance, there was some sort of alternate assignment.
We normally had like a paper due or something.
And that's well and good, and I know a lot of band directors that do the paper thing, but what good is having your trumpet player missed a performance, what good does it do having them write a 3-page paper on fill in the blank? Because chances are, is the director really going to read the paper? Is the person actually going to write the paper or steal it off of some website? You know, I would rather have them come in on maybe 3 separate days and do a half-hour practice each in a practice room, if you have a practice room, or just in your band room, however you want to do it. But I've always kind of wanted to make my punishments relevant. Like, and this is off topic a little bit, but a lot of marching bands, if you mess up, you do laps around the football field, or you do extra jumping jacks. Okay, that might, in the long run, benefit strength and endurance, but why not just do an extra 10 minutes of basics? Or something, or do something relevant to what you're actually doing instead of just punishing for punishing's sake. I don't know. That's just my personal philosophy. I'm getting off topic.
It's more like busy work rather than something that can be productive.
Absolutely, and most of the time in a public school setting, when you're trying to get so much accomplished, you have to be efficient. And silly punishments, to me, don't belong. I believe in punishments, but make it relevant, make it worthwhile. Did I answer your questions on assessing?
Yes, just because I didn't it was just a joke in our school, and so it's not going to class, but it's not really holding up that kind of standard.
Right, and certainly when you get into like the inside concert band wind ensemble, there are some more options, more relevant options. You can get into some writing tools, and you could do that in marching band. For example, I want to say 2 or 3 times per season. Braden, am I correct in this? 2 or 3 times per season, we would watch the most recent video performance, and I'd have a question kind of sheet, assessment sheet. They'd fill it out, turn it in, and as long as you completed that and you took it seriously and didn't just write band rules, as long as you participated in that activity. But it is difficult in marching band to make it, I guess, academically not relevant, but it's tough because it's like part sport and part extracurricular and part curricular, so it is difficult. Let's take 5 minutes to let my voice kind of stop. I'm tired of hearing it so much. So 5 minutes, use the restroom, whatever you need. We'll start back up in 5.
When you develop holes in your drill because people quit or you are forced to kick them out, do you rewrite your drill or do you mark your holes?
It depends. Personally, if there are holes in the drill, it depends if it's early in the season. If the drill was either just written or just passed out and there's time and either yourself or the person that wrote your drill is willing to fix it, go for it. Otherwise, I would say there's such a gray area, but do what you can. For example, if there's a curvilinear form, it's pretty easy to adjust a couple of people and close up the hole. However, if there's a block formation, you're not going to be successful. I mean, you are really altering the student's drill, especially if they have already learned it and rehearsed it. That's not such a good idea. So it really is situational. I know we're going through that at Kiski. There's a flute player that tore something in her ankle during dance class. We're going to end up closing the holes in the curvilinears and just leaving the holes in the any sort of boxes that are formed. So use your best judgment, and it depends. If you're a competitive band where that is something that's pretty serious, then you really have to put a lot of thought and creativity into it. If you don't compete, then it's usually not as big of a deal. So, yes. Sectional. That's an excellent question. Sectionals, meaning during band camp, during summer, during the school year. Okay. Well, I usually leave that. The question was about sectionals, and you can approach sectionals any way you really want to. I did some sectional work during the school day when marching band was part of the curriculum. I was lucky enough to have some space at my disposal, so I'd have myself with woodwinds and brass, and the drum major maybe with percussion, working on separate things. Over the summer, a lot of times I would leave that up to the section leaders. The section leaders would talk to their sections and see when they were available, maybe for weekly or bi-weekly sectionals. They would let me know. I'd be sure to be there and in the room or just in the building so that they would have access and they could do what they needed to do. During band camp, usually what happened was that throughout the breakdown of the day, we would focus on marching in the morning when it was a little bit cooler. Then before lunch, we would break into sectionals inside. Then out in the afternoon, we would put some things together, or we would march in the morning, and then after lunch, we would have sectionals inside for a couple hours, break up woodwinds, brass, percussion, and even, as we needed, what we call sub-sectionals, just flutes, just clarinets, just trumpets, so on and so forth. So there are lots of options. It's whatever fits your schedule, whatever, taking a little bit of tradition into account, whatever has been done in the past. But it's really up to you, whatever you think is going to be most effective to teach your kids. Yes?
How many female marching band directors do you know? Are there any?
My high school is really a
Marcus
250
Marcus
plus.
is Texas, they're top 10 in the nation.
I know personally 4. I know 4. And they range from little, 50, 60 kids to 150, 160 kids. And I'm not going to lie, it's tough, okay? Because the field, it seems like, marching band director, even instrumental music education at like the middle and high school level tends to be a little bit male dominated. So I totally understand the apprehension or the anxiety behind, even if you really enjoy marching band, taking that position. But it's something that if you're confident and you're organized and you've got structure ready to go, and you believe in what you're doing, that they'll buy in. I strongly believe that. I feel like it's once we start to second guess and we're timid or we're, some of those other things organizationally or structurally are lacking, that's when, kids unfortunately think that they can, have their way, but it shouldn't be regardless. But, just teach with conviction, organization, you got it. Yes? Yes?
Okay, so Kyle asked about filling holes, and at my high school, we had floaters where somebody's drill, like 2 people would learn one drill spot. How do you feel about that? Because I kind of feel bad about that.
That is not the norm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. She said that, there are extra students, loaders, or sometimes band managers, or sometimes they're kind of like second-string people that for some reason aren't participating in the band, but they learn drill anyway, just in case there's a hole. That is not the norm that I know of. I don't really feel good about that at all, because if a student's going to learn the drill and put the time and energy in, they should perform all the time. So I think that's a little unorthodox.
That was the high school.
Right, it's not wrong, it's just not something that I necessarily buy into.
Alright, this might be a weird question, having never been in marching band, but like you were talking about having the same musical standard as like a concert band, so why do drum majors conduct such a large pattern? Like, I feel like bands only play loud, and it just looks weird.
Okay, a couple of comments, very good. A couple of comments first. I know I talked about having a certain musical standard when we're outside, and I totally believe in that. But I think I also said something about environmentally, you're playing outside on a football field. Certain things, you can't help but be different, okay? Like, it just, certain things, if you have a really delicate flute solo in your marching band show, if you play that as soft as maybe you would inside, no one's going to hear it from the top of the press box unless maybe you mic it or you just play it louder. So certain variables, certain things I feel like have to change. The main idea though is that we play with a good characteristic tone. We play in tune, we're playing in time. We have some dynamic variance throughout the show. It's not just all really, really loud in my opinion. So again, to me, philosophically, yes, we teach the same things inside as outside, but there are certain things that are different, that you have no control over, so there are going to be variations. You know what I mean? What was the second part of your question?
It's just that like they're on a podium already.
Oh, yes, the drum major, okay? Yes, they're on a podium, but it's for clarity. It's because the bands that have 200 people and people are pushed way back, they've got to see the pattern, okay? And some of it's for show as well, because they are performing as well. All right, I know when you go to the orchestra, see the orchestra, some conductors, it's just like, and you know. Yeah, or maybe even you guys play or sing for some professors that really are dramatic. Okay, you know, that's okay. And some drum majors, it's just the way they are taught, it's their style. But I think from a practical point of view, they have to exaggerate what they're doing because they're far away and they're trying to control a large ensemble in a large space. Yes?
So speaking to part of that for a moment, going to student leadership. So I think more than most settings, again, marching band offers so many opportunities for student leadership.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, you know, I think a lot of this, there's evidence in a lot of this room, those people go on to be in music or music educators or whatever. So do you ever offer like private learning opportunities for those students to either learn how to conduct or learn how to section lead? Because, you know, I had leadership opportunities in high school too, but I look back and I go, well, gosh, I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
You know, so.
Absolutely. I don't necessarily offer, you know, leadership courses or workshops or conducting workshops to anyone that wants to do it. However, when the leadership group of students is selected, we do get together at least 3 or 4 times over the summer, usually every couple weeks, and there's a leadership packet that I think is there, and it's by Dr. Tim Lotzenheiser. Yeah, I'm sure if you're in music ed, you know all about him. But I tried really hard to work with the student leaders to help define their roles, because it's, you know, a lot of times those students that got those positions kind of inherently are leaders and already have a lot of the good things down, like leading by example and being positive, because otherwise you wouldn't select them as leaders. They wouldn't want to be, and then they wouldn't have gotten the position. But there are certain things that you definitely want to talk about when you get your leaders together. For example, I had a section leader that was just really, really vocal. And she was an outstanding section leader, but she was section leader for 2 years. But her first year was, she almost took disciplining her section too far. And that was something important that I needed to talk about with my student leaders, because I do not feel like it is a student's role to discipline at all. It should be staff member, director, okay? We can, as leaders, we can encourage, we can lead by example, we can set a standard, we can have sectionals, we can talk about what it means to be a good marching band member all we want, but students shouldn't punish students. I don't agree with that. And I think in some respects that's called hazing, right? So, I mean, it's just not good. That's not something you want to get into. So, hopefully that answered your question. But leadership is definitely in marching band an outstanding thing, and I've been lucky to have some experience in working with leaders and hopefully developing leadership skills. Any other questions? We are running short of time. 2 more. Yes.
Do you think that it's beneficial to have camp at the school or away from the school, so they're completely removed from everything going on at home, they're away and they're only focused on band?
You're going to hate this answer, but I kind of like both. I like band camp being away from school because they're isolated. You can focus on marching band for 4, 5, 6 days at a time. Unfortunately, it's expensive. That's really the biggest drawback. At school, yes, there are distractions. Yes, people can leave early to go to dentist appointments and doctor's appointments, and those things are really, really irritating. But I know that if there's an issue with a student, everyone's at home. So if someone gets sick or if there's a problem, it's a little less stress for me to have to deal with because they're already at home. So for some practical reasons, I like it at school. All the equipment's there. I don't have to worry about moving a bunch of stuff. It's, you know, it's kind of like you're at home. You know, it's like going out to dinner, making a great dinner at home. Both are great. You know what I mean? One more question, and then I just a couple of little things.
Can I add on to what you just said?
Yes.
If you go away, your band becomes like a unit, because it's like sleeping over with a whole bunch of high schoolers, although there's all the bad things that happen, it makes everyone understand where everyone's coming from, and there's like teamwork, and there's people who will start crying, and somebody will be like,
So pick and choose when you're going to get overly emotional, I guess, like I've told you stories about. Always be organized, structured, accountable, and consistent, okay? Like I said outside, there needs to be a rhyme and a reason behind everything you do. If you can't answer the question from a student or parent, why did you do that, then you need to ask yourself, why are you really doing that? Is it just because, or is there a specific reason that is going to benefit the program? Whether it's a basics exercise, or why you're traveling to Chicago instead of Washington, D.C., you know, goofy things like that. There has to be a rhyme or reason. Again, make friends with your administration, colleagues, and boosters as quickly as possible, and upset about that. Make every decision, this is number 4, make every decision with the best interest of your program in mind. Okay, before you buy certain equipment, before you sign up for a certain band festival, before you schedule band camp, what is going to set your ensemble up for success? The best, the highest level of success possible. And definitely along with number 1, don't sweat the small stuff. Again, things happen. Today the Long Ranger kind of, you know, died on me and I had to scream. And did I want to do that? No. It was really cold this morning. I was kind of sad about that. But did I have any power over that? No. So many things are going to happen beyond your control. You just have to keep everything in perspective. And again, remind yourself that you're here to build a great band, build a great program, but certainly teach kids about all the other life stuff that in a lot of ways is more important than marching and playing around the field. So thank you very much. Your questions were outstanding, and I talked way more than I thought I was. So thank you very much.